My name is Amy Drake, and I am with Natalie Saunders, who was my cooperating teacher, and we are going to go through our post-observation conference. All right, Natalie, if you just want to talk a little bit about your lesson and what your objectives were and what you hope to accomplish.
Sure. At this point in the lesson in Julius Caesar, the students are supposed to look at how to determine traits of a character and eventually determine how each of those characters works on persuasive techniques. So they worked as groups, and they each had a character assigned to them, and they were to make a list of all of the things that created that character. And eventually in the end, once the lesson was accomplished, which took a couple of days, they had to determine who they thought this person was and what most information they had about them and write a first-person short write-up as if they were the character.
And the portion of the class that I saw began with the still lifes.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about that?
Yes. So initially, to get the kids back into what they were doing, and I'd been gone for a few days, and they'd been gone for a few days, they had to create still lifes from anywhere in the play that they'd read so far. So each group got to pick what they selected. So the goal was for them to start looking at who were these characters, what were they doing in the scene, and why was that scene important to what was happening in the rest of the play.
Okay. I really enjoyed your class, by the way. I thought it was really fun. So if you look at the questions that I sent you so that you had a chance to look at them, the first question was, what did the students accomplish in this lesson? What did they accomplish?
So actually what they did accomplish, even if some of them were going back into the textbook, they were finding information about each one of those characters so they could describe who they were.
Yeah, and I witnessed that myself as I was watching. I could, after you gave the assignment, I heard them discussing immediately about what are we going to do, and they just started brainstorming about what they remember from the text, and then they just dived right in and found it.
Because if they didn't remember, they knew they had to go back into the book. After we'd been gone for, 4 days? So it'd been a little while since they visited it. But yeah, I agree with you. They had somebody on that textbook, and they were trying to find out, okay, what do I know? And if they didn't know, some of them had asked me in different groups, well, we don't have much information. So I said, go ahead and skim ahead. So some of them really did. They looked ahead for their character to find more information about them.
Yeah, so I think that you accomplished that. And what standards did you look at? Where does it fit in with Iowa Core, the standards?
So we are looking at stuff with reading and, writing also. I guess everything was kind of mixed together. So looking at traits of a character, how a character fits in. Determining character traits, I guess we're looking at traits of a character, so that's the biggest thing right there. What else did you ask? Sorry.
Just how it fits in with the Iowa Core.
Oh, yeah. So how it fits in. And then, of course, going into that idea of creating the traits of who a person is sort of can relate to doing an analysis later of a character because they're writing in first person, so they were writing in first person style.
I went through the standards myself, and I was looking through, and I circled 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 reading standards, and I circled 1, 2, 3 language standards.
Well, that's more than I was looking at, so that's good to know.
And 2 writing standards.
Yay.
And so I thought that, of course I didn't get to see the second day.
Right.
But I knew that that's what you were doing, that they had to do the semantic chart and then write their summary about their character. And so you covered all 3 of those. I thought that was good. How do you feel the lesson went?
In the end I thought it went pretty well because day 2 of part of that lesson after they finished this, their charts were traded with another group, and they could only look at the chart and try and figure out who is this person based on what was on the chart alone. They couldn't use what they already knew, and they were able to ask questions of that group or give comments about what they were missing so the other group could add more to it. So I think in the end it worked out really well because they each had to tell me then, what they understood about that person in the end. So I don't know. I think overall the kids seem to do pretty well with it.
Have you had a chance to, have they turned in that writing portion?
Yeah, well, yes, but
Okay.
I have them in a pile right now. I haven't looked at them.
Okay.
And I'm glad to know that the kids, when I explained write in first person, you could say, hi, my name is Cassius, or I am Portia. They seem to start writing right away. So I didn't have to wait or explain that. They just went right into it. So I guess that's a good thing. I guess we'll find out when I read them.
Yeah.
So, and also, too, I think the biggest thing was I should be able to tell based on what they wrote if they really did participate wholeheartedly with their group. And even if they weren't totally a participant, if they at least paid attention and were able to get stuff off the chart, they should hopefully still be able to write about a person and their traits in that first person if they paid attention.
And that really helps because at the time they hadn't even finished the play, so that helps them make predictions about those characters in the future. What one thing from the lesson did you think was most effective?
Most effective. You know, I really do think putting our kids together for all this group work was effective because it was early in the week. They had kind of been away from each other for a while. Instead of jumping right in and making them remember everything on their own, they were really working with each other or say, I didn't get that. Did you see that? Or they could assign something off to somebody. So I honestly think for this one, putting them into the group work was effective. I really do.
I thought it was also very effective too. And it was good for them to not only figure out what scene for themselves, but to see other people's scenes. And I thought, I wrote down some of the things that you asked them, some of the questions that you asked, and you really asked, during that guided instruction, you really asked them some really great questions. Let me go back down here. Like you said, take a look at their scene. What do you notice? Who's been killed so far? I mean, you're asking them plot questions, but then you're also saying, why do we need to know this? Why is this scene important? So you are, you know, it was clear that they were learning. What are some examples of strategies or techniques that worked in the lesson?
Strategies or techniques. So you want what I did for them? I would probably say, the prompting probably made a difference. Going around to each group to just make sure they're on task, I think made a big difference because some of them being first thing in the morning have a tendency to not necessarily want to participate. So if they know that I'm coming to each of their groups, that makes a difference. And forcing them, I don't want to say forcing, but making sure they are all aware that in the end, they do all have to have, some group collaboration as they were group participation and contribution, and how well they focus with each other was a part of the assignment. So a student knew that if you were going to be on your technology, you couldn't do that as well. And in the end, knowing that, I guess it took us 2 days though to get to the end result. By day 2, they knew at the end of this project that they would have to do a written portion of it, so they kind of knew they had to be a part of that. But I would say the biggest thing too, I say getting them active first was important to me so that they could recall what was going on, to the physicality of it, and I think that helped them focus once we got into the room that
day. For
the
visual learners.
Yes, yeah.
And I also noticed that everyone, because I was, while the scene was going on up here, I was watching the kids to see, and every single one of them was engaged. There was no one doing something else. They were all paying attention. They had to turn to the opposite side of the room, so they all had to turn in their chairs, and they all did. They were all paying attention, listening to your questions, and a few people, were offering guesses about what was going on, but they were all paying attention.
I think that was the fun part too, is that they were going to have to guess, and I think that's the fun part of it too. So then if they know that they're right, that's kind of exciting. And if they were wrong, it's not a big deal, because I was open. I don't even remember if it was in the class you came into, where I would say, you know what, I don't even know what's going on.
Yeah,
you could guess, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, you did. You said that
and
a couple of times.
And so it was non-threatening.
And you asked questions that I think maybe some of the students might have asked too, but you asked them so they didn't have to, and they were able to just kind of throw out those guesses without worrying about if it's right or wrong.
Yep, it's true.
Yeah.
And I think too, because reading the Shakespeare anyway is tough for the readers I have because of their reading level, that I think prompting them would help them so they knew that they weren't struggling on their own, because I don't think that they could have done some of that without prompting, at least for some of those kids.
Yeah, and I thought you guided them very well while they were trying to find their scenes too, because they would, I have an idea for this scene, but then you would ask them a couple of questions, and then they would, maybe we need to rethink this. This isn't maybe what we thought it was.
Or were you in the class where they had a group where they're like, we're going to do this? It was the picture.
Yes.
And I said, well, what is it? And they said, I don't know. I said, I don't know either. I said, so you better figure it out. And they had to go into the script to figure out. And they changed it. The group that initially did that didn't even do that picture because they realized that we don't know what it is either. So I said, okay, then let's just not do it. And they did. They did a nice job digging for those. But they had to dig in the script and figure it out on their own what was happening to their still life.
Yeah, it's exciting to see.
It was fun.
So they did their writing. So what results how will this help you plan in the future? After you read their essays or their paragraphs, how will that help you plan what to do with the rest of the play?
One of the things we looked at was what these people were like as a person, because we're also looking at persuasion, how people persuade each other. So I want to know, did they understand what this person was like? And do they understand them well enough to try and figure out the tactics that they use to persuade another person? Because we're working into that idea of how do we persuade other people? How do we write up, that organized persuasive essay? So it's not so much as important, did they correctly, completely right in that first person so much as did they kind of dig into the parts of this person to understand who they are, to start looking at how we as people use our persuasive tactics to get what we want in life with each other, wherever it
So
may
to
be.
make a personal connection
Yeah.
with this really old story.
Yep. And we've been talking a lot lately about the politics of it too. This was an assassination. That was a plan for an assassination. And right now we're to that point, looking at these people, if you were in those shoes, what would you do to persuade somebody not to kill you? Or could they persuade you to be on that team? So that's sort of where we're at in the middle right now.
Okay. What will you do with this group in the future to enhance the skills they gained?
Oh my gosh. That's a good question since we have to move on to novel work next.